So, Osmongold. I know basically nothing about the guy. It's been this running joke that my friend Globeman looks like him, which I'm not making that comparison anymore. The only story I ever heard about him is, and it was in his own words, and I have no idea if this was supposed to be real or not, but he said that he used to use a dead rat as an alarm clock because in the morning, when the sun rays would shine through his window, the heat from the sun would strike the decomposing corpse of the rat, and the smell would wake him up. So that was his alarm clock. And it appears he's being canceled a little bit for what he said. I'm not going to play the clip, and I'm not going to give you his entire quote, but basically he's saying he doesn't give a fuck, or he's not going to cry a river for people who are getting genocided when genocide is in their charter. So Osman, I don't know if you knew this, but the children didn't write that charter. By all means, blow to smithereens every member of Hamas. Have them die in horrible ways. But not kids, and not women, and not men who just simply live there. Then he goes on to make this brilliant argument that the Palestinians would be doing the same thing. So he's not making the argument that they started it. He's saying, yes, what's being done is terrible, but they're just as bad. When you make this argument, what you're saying is, we are equal to them. Everything that you outline, everything that you lay out about how terrible they are, and then when you put it that way, all you're doing is saying we're the same as them. That's not my claim, but that is what you're saying. I can understand the idea. It's hard to stomach, but that you would drop an enormous bomb on a building that you know I don't know, like all of the top members of a terrorist group are in that building. And like there's a couple janitors in there, and there's like the secretary that works in the building. And they're going to be killed as a result of that. That sounds absolutely terrible. It's understandable, but the collateral damage has not been skewed overwhelmingly toward the bad guys that we're trying to get to. It's been overwhelmingly skewed at people who didn't do anything wrong. You may disagree with that, which is why I'm going to do this. I want you to read this and just think about whether or not you agree with it. I'm only going to leave this up here for a little bit, so pause to read. This is, word for word, the letter Osama bin Laden wrote to justify attacking America. All I did was replace United States, Israel, Jews with Palestinian and Hamas. If you think it's fine that kids are being killed, then congratulations. You think the same way Osama bin Laden thinks. If you think, well, it doesn't count if they're Muslim, then you don't know how to think. I detest Hamas. People have compared their actions to slave rebellions that resulted in massacres and said, well, because slavery was bad, they won't condemn the rebellions. And by extension, they don't condemn retaliation for armed occupation. To me, that's not me. Saying, well, what do you expect to happen doesn't mean that you can't also condemn an action, like October 7th. For example. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to moralize the situation or try to make excuses for any side. All I'm going to do is point out that if you think X is wrong, then you can't say X is not wrong just because somebody else did it, for example. I saw some clips from that recent hospital bombing. Maybe you've seen some of them too. The bombing, it caught these various tents that were just outside of the hospital being used to house patients. It caught those tents on fire, and you can see hands deep within the inferno reaching up just completely pointlessly as these people burned to death. There's also, in the video, I saw people who are on fire crawling over broken glass and shattered concrete. just trying to escape. And I just can't imagine not thinking that that's wrong. But the way people view atrocities on one side of this situation versus the other, it's such a joke. Osmongold, he's not even remotely the only person to say something like what he said. In fact, a lot of things I've heard have been a lot worse than what he said. There was a U.S. congressman. His name is Andy Ogles. I had to look him up because I couldn't remember. But he got asked, I think this was like in January, February. Somebody asked him a question about didn't he think it was wrong how so many thousands of children are being killed. And his response was, we should kill all of them. There's no consequence for saying, I mean, that is a deliberate call for a genocide of Palestinian people, specifically children. And he's not going to receive any kind of punishment for that. I don't remember which person it was, if it was Rashida Tlaib or whoever, but they retweeted a tweet somebody else tweeted that said, I think all it said was, from the river to the sea, or it contained that phrase. It said some other things. But she got formally censured by the government just for doing that. But you can openly call for a genocide and there are no consequences. There's this podcast literally called Two Nice Jewish Boys. This was back in September, but one of them said that if they had a button and it would kill every single living person in Gaza, then they would push it. There have been calls to nuke Gaza. Here are some fantastic quotes by people in Netanyahu's cabinet or whatever they call it over there. Netanyahu, he's repeatedly compared Hamas to Amalek. Now, I'm sure people that watch my videos know all about the Old Testament verses that we regularly use against apologists. But just to be clear, what it says is, now go, attack the Amalekites, and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. This is genocidal language. It just flat out is. You hardly need religion to support the idea of committing a genocide. It could be done in other ways, but religion is so good at poisoning the mind because of all these verses and the justification you have to give for them. There's this dude on TikTok. I don't even know his name. I don't watch his videos, but I've seen a few people stitch his stuff. That's really the only reason I know why he exists. But I saw a video of him and he was responding to a comment somebody made about the killing of all the firstborn children in Egypt being bad. And I'm not kidding you. His response to that was, they fucked around and found out. That's actually how he put it. Pharaoh was the only person who had any say in whether or not Moses and his people were going to be let go. But children of people that were powerless about this were killed, and the response is they fucked around and found out. Really. If you're ever having a conversation with somebody about this kind of thing, simply ask them if they think a justice system, a judicial system in America that operated that way would be good. Ask them if they think it would be appropriate for somebody who committed a crime to take random members of their family and have them punished, really in any way. I mean, you can say killed, but any kind of, like a fine. Fine the children of somebody for committing a crime. Or you can just very generically ask them, is it ever appropriate to punish somebody for a crime they didn't commit? I've never once had anybody say yes to that, but then they make excuses for when it happens in the Bible. See, these people, their brain does work. They are better people than their beliefs, than what their Bible says, because they don't actually believe these kinds of things for the most part. These abstract hypotheticals. They have no choice. They're not being confronted with a real situation. In reality, I can't imagine them going along with it, but It only takes a few. They simply have to go along with everything in it because their identity is wrapped in it. They're fully committed to everything within this book being good. The book is the source of good. I've had countless conversations about this kind of thing. There's the when Noah's flood, for example, and the excuse I always hear from that, which is hilarious, is, yeah, but people were sacrificing their children on the altar of Molech or whatever it is. And so, you ask them, really? The children were sacrificing children? No. Then it wasn't okay for them to be killed. And you either get something like God can do whatever they want, or it's fine because the kids automatically go to heaven anyways. There's an academic term for this. It's called making shit up. But this is what you get with this kind of stuff. And I try to frame this as often as I can. When it comes to these types of issues, they are told the narrative is that it is a cosmic battle over good versus evil. Other people aren't just wrong. You don't just disagree with them. They are literally on the side of evil. And therefore, apparently, it's okay to kill kids.